037, September 26, 1916. South end of a communication trench nicknamed Corridor near Thiepval on the Somme. Private William Hargreaves shoulders a condenser can that sloshes warm. Corporal Arthur Little checks a spirit level nailed to the rear leg of a Vickers tripod. The bubble centers. He tightens the traverse clamp until it bites. One sentence of foreshadow. The machine gun will not move more than the width of a doorway for the next 4 hours. Cut to a number. 6 men, 4.5 liters of water, 1 field telephone, and a corridor 1.2 meters wide, 40 meters long, packed a dozen times over with men who intend to come down it. By 3:22, the dugout lamp is dimmed. The team, number 2 section, works by feel. The breech cover snaps. The feed block clicks. The oiler's straw smell cuts through cordite trapped in wool. The gun points at a blind corner in a trench that narrows between stacked sandbags and chalk walls slick with night condensation. Beyond the corner, enemy grenadiers mass at intervals. If they turn the corner, they are inside the company's line, inside dugouts, aid posts, runners' niches, no man's land bypassed by spade and sap. The corridor must stay empty. The geography looks trivial in daylight. It is not. A communication trench is a supply artery and an attack route. It is also a ready-made killing lane with walls high enough to keep heads down and soil firm enough to transmit shock. The crew knows this. They have measured it. They have marked it. They have rehearsed it. At 0330, the battalion on their left signals that German bombers are assembling at Hawthorne Alley. By 3:33, the corridor begins to breathe. A grenade clinks on the far side of the corner and coughs shrapnel into the chalk. The machine gun team holds. Their job is not to duel grenades. Their job is to deny space. They will do it with a method so plain it hides in front of the eye. Fixed lines. Fixed lines sound like jargon. They are a choice. They mean giving up freedom to gain certainty. They mean that the gun will traverse only between 2 exact points set beforehand, hitting the same invisible stripe over and over, so any man who enters that stripe is met with the same outcome every time. To lock that in, the crew uses a simple hack, and it does not involve a factory part. Little takes a loop of telephone wire from his pocket, salvaged insulation, long stripped off. He ties one end to the left handle of the Vickers, runs the wire down to a tent peg banged into the duckboards at a precise spot, then back to the right handle and to a second peg a hand's breadth away. The wire forms a taut V. Pull left handle. The wire bites early. Stop. Pull right. The other leg checks it. Stop. The traverse dial will mark the angles. The wire makes them real, repeatable, unfakeable in the dark when hands shake and vision swims. That is the trick. That is the hack. 2 pegs in a wire, turned into geometry. Liddell gives 1 finger tap on the casing. Everyone hears it, no words now. At 0336, the first probe comes. Boots scrape. Someone shouts a warning in a language the British can parse only in rhythm. The corner blooms with a thrown flare that does not clear the sandbags, so it burns white inside the enemy party. Shadows jump and compress. Little does not fire. He breathes once, twice, counting the beat they practiced. 2 on, 1 off. 2 on, 1 off. The point man steps into the corridor and vanishes at the chest. The Vickers speaks in half-second stutters that sound like cloth ripping across a table. This is not the cyclic roar of a demonstration. The crew shoots sustained, 2-second bursts spaced to keep the water jacket honest. The beaten zone, the oval of impacts, stays where the wire says it must. No sweeping arcs, no excitement, not coverage by hope, coverage by metronome. By 0345, the trench is a metered instrument. Number 1, the gunner keeps his thumbs loose and elbows anchored. Number 2 feeds in the cloth belt with the slow pull of a seamstress inspecting her thread. Number 3 watches the condenser can and the water jacket, not for drama, for steam. When it billows, the rhythm lengthens. When it dies back, the rhythm tightens. The belt pulls, the links vanish, the brass falls into a sandbag nest placed for exactly that. A stoppage would be a mortal clock. There is none yet. The crew is not lucky. The crew is prepared. Pan outward. A map of the Thiepval Ridge lays the pattern bare. October's objectives sit behind September's churned ground. German units counterpunch down communication trenches because open ground is suicide under indirect and enfilade fire. The British know that a corridor is a pipe. They can cork it, not everywhere, but here. One corridor closed, can keep a company-sized leak from flooding a line. If that is true locally, then this follows system-wide. Short denial in a narrow space creates long security across a broad front. A ratio emerges. 40 meters denied equals 400 meters spared, frantic hand-to-hand. Not elegant. Effective. How does a crew turn principle into practice when sleep is measured in minutes? They work a chain as precise as any factory. During afternoon stand-to, they paced the trench with a surveyor's eye. They chalked measurements on a gas tin lid and hung it from the rear leg, 6 meters from corner to first step, 11 to the duckboard break, 19 to the broken sap, 23 to the traverse board. They converted meters to mils on the Vickers dial. They set pegs at the extremes of the allowed arc, pegged not to earth alone, but to numbers. They tested once by daylight. They tested twice by night. They rehearsed belt changes with mittens on, in case a phosphorus flare forced eyes shut. They fixed a spirit level to the rear leg, because the god of fixed lines is the god of level platforms. 1 millimeter off at the leg becomes tens of centimeters off in the lane. They made a water plan. 4.5 liters on hand, condenser attached, 1 emergency can warmed in the dugout. They briefed a watch rhythm so simple a frightened brain could keep it. 2 on, 1 off, count to 3 on the off. They did the simple things. They made them binding. Flashback inserts. 10 days earlier, an instructional yard 10 miles behind the line. The same crew kneels around the same tripod on a mat of coconuts and bolt heads. A sergeant from the Divisional Machine Gun Company lectures without romance. The beaten zone at 150 yards is not a cone of invincibility. It is a lozenge you must pin to a place and maintain by discipline. He holds up a strip of telephone wire. He calls it a poor man's traverse stop. He shows how the gun creeps to the right under recoil. He shows chalk marks you refresh every 20 minutes on the tripod legs to rebuke creep. He says, don't sweep like a scythe unless you want to hit nothing. Then he says nothing for a full 10 seconds and lets the silence carry the weight. Cut back. The enemy tries again. This time, they come in a broken line, 3 sets of 2, spread out to eat not all of the burst at once. It does not matter. At fixed lines, the Vickers is a gate that opens and closes on intervals. It ceases to care about individual courage. It applies the same pressure every time. The first pair drop into the slit. The second pair stall at the corner. The third pair throw 2 grenades, counting to 4 on the fuses. Both bounce back and burst bright in their jurisdiction. The corner remains the corner. The corridor remains empty. By 4:10, the gun has fired about 1,200 rounds. That is not many on a good day, but these are not good hours. The hottest parts sweat. The crew rotates positions every 5 minutes. Number 4 keeps the range card current. If rubble shifts, the numbers change. Number 5 checks the line to the platoon HQ for frays. He anchors it under a nailed slat so a panicked boot does not kick it loose. Number 6 is the mule. He runs the shortest run, perhaps 30 yards, to and from the dugout with water cans and extra belts, knuckles white inside wool. He goes twice now. He returns once with bad news. They may need to barter water with the mortar team, whose crew also boils their tubes. Liddell nods. No drama. He has a contingency everyone knows but no one enjoys. If water runs out, there is another fluid. The Vickers does not care. The crew does. Meanwhile, on the map, the corridor is one of 4 the company has pegged as likely attack routes. This is not luck. This is reconnaissance turned into geometry. On the morning of the 25th, a patrol counted shoe prints and grenade fragments at 3 corners. They chalked strikes on a trench wall and counted the spacing. From this, they guessed where the enemy staging bays sit, how many men could assemble, and how long they would need to reach the corner. Those numbers fed into the fixed line plan. Micro-observation into macro-denial. The parts talk to the whole. At 4:25, a shell lands farther up the communication trench, carving a step into the floor. The step matters. It alters the route men take when they run. It shifts where their ribs appear above the parapet. It changes the math. Number 4 revises the traverse dial a hair to the right. Liddell checks the wire. It is still tight, still honest. The spirit level shows true. The gun stays a gate. The enemy adapts. They bring a Maxim down the trench on a shielded mount, intending to post it at the corner and fire back down the corridor. An iron tilted left to spit iron right. This is clever. It fails for the same reason fixed lines succeed. Geometry punishes haste. The Maxim cannot point without space to swing. The swing requires a level patch. There is none at the corner because the British spaded the floor into slight ridges to catch grenades before they roll. When the Maxim crew tries to find level, they expose elbows and armpits where the corridor's wall dips. The Vickers taps 3 short bursts, too long. The Maxim stops being relevant. The corridor remains a corridor. Empty. 040. 2 hours into the hold. The barrel is still serviceable. The water is not. The condenser can's return pipe hiccups steam instead of liquid. The jacket level drops and keeps dropping. The warmed can is already in the jacket. The last of the ration water sits in a mess tin at the dugout hatch. You can survive the smell. You cannot survive a boiled barrel. Little decides without speech. Number 6 gets the hand signal everyone dreads. 3 fingers quick, then curl the wrist, then flat palm down. It means we switch to the emergency plan. Men move into the dugout shadows with the same discretion they would show a chaplain in a confessional. Within 60 seconds, there is enough fluid to keep the jacket above the jacket tube. The first pour is a shock, so is the hiss, so is the ammonia that blasts the nose. The crew breathes sideways and keeps firing. They are not heroes in this moment. They are mechanics keeping a machine inside its operating envelope by any input necessary. Here the chronology slows and the narration zooms out. The power of a water-cooled gun in trench fighting is not just the rate of fire. It is the rate you can sustain. An air-cooled barrel lives by bursts and changes. A Vickers with a condenser system lives by geometry and patience. The condenser can return most of the boiled water as liquid, so losses are lower, and steam plume, often the traitor signal, diminishes. On a calm night, the plume still tells tales. On a churned battlefield, it blends. The trick is feeding enough liquid to keep the jacket a bath rather than a sauna. Hence the hack within the hack. Any liquid at near body temperature enters gentler, flashes less, and gives more minutes in the safe zone. Men learn this. Men pass it on. By 0505, the enemy tries what doctrine says they should. A blocking squad crawls up a sap that feeds into the corridor from the side, hoping to reach the gun from its flank. The patrol leader is careful. He times his move under the sound of his own artillery. He goes 6 meters. He goes 8. He uses the broken step as cover. He reaches the mouth of the sap and sees only a blank board at chest height across the corridor. He thinks it's a repair. It is not. It is a plank sitting on 2 sandbags, set by the British an hour earlier when they realized the sap existed. The plank is scrolled with numbers. A small nail holds it at a tilt. This is the range cardboard. It is a metronome. It tells the gun when to pause and when to resume, so that bursts land where men will be if they move at an average crouch. The patrol leader rises a hand's breadth to investigate. The gunner does not aim. He does not see the man. He is watching his dial. He fires 2 seconds at 6 mils left. The man is there because men are not special when geometry is in charge. The sap becomes irrelevant for the next hour. What happened next made the pattern obvious. The more the enemy adapted with human cunning, the more the British reverted to mathematical stubbornness. Not more bullets, not louder bursts, tighter control. The wire pegs became a doctrine in miniature. The chalk marks on legs became a religion. The level bubble became a mandate. Keep the platform true, keep the gun fixed, keep the time exact. That was the triad. It is dull to recite and decisive to maintain. By 5:20, the tally is cruel but simple. The gun has fired roughly 3,000 rounds. The barrel has not been changed. The water jacket has been topped twice with emergency fluid. The condenser can has returned most of what boiled. The belt box is half empty. The phone line has survived 3 tug jerks and 1 scuff. The wire pegs have not slipped because the pegs were hammered not at random but into a board laid under the duck boards, then wired again under the boards to the trench pickets. A hack on a hack, strength built from household habits. At 0531, a light creeps across the trench wall. It is not dawn. It is a flare beyond the corner. Under it, the enemy tries a rush. 8 men in tight sequence to trade bodies for ground. The Vickers answers the only way it can. Rhythm locked, traverse checked, burst measured. 1-2, 1, 1-2, pause. The corridor drinks 1, then 2, then 3. The 4th man slips back. The 5th falls into the 1st. The sixth stops to pull the fifth and makes himself a larger target for a steady zone that does not care about intentions. The seventh decides his movement is negative value and becomes a block to the eighth. The rush dies without heroics and without drama. The corridor reverts to geometry. The numbers told a different story than courage. In open fields, teams may sweep and search to suppress. In a trench corner, suppression is a synonym for miss. The enemy cannot fan out. You cannot rake. You must hold a lane to a width within a hand. This is where a simple physical limiter, 2 pegs and a wire, turns human will into machine repeatability. In the last hour, the gun's muzzle has not strayed more than 5 centimeters from the center of the lane at the corner. The dial says so. The chalk says so. The bodies at the corner, accumulated and then dragged back by desperate hands, say so in the harsh language of fact. By 5:50, a new problem surfaces. The belt cloth absorbs moisture. In night air, laced with steam, it swells, grips, and threatens to feed rough. Number two's hands, slick from topping the jacket and from the air itself, stick to the weave. He adjusts by feeding from lower thumb and forefinger rather than palm, and by shaking the belt once every 5 seconds with the tiniest vibration, enough to stop the cloth from setting in a kink, not enough to throw the rounds out of line. This too was taught, and this too is a habit that looks small and saves hours. New cut, macro, again. The battalion log for this night totals the German attempts to breach in 6 trenches in its sector. 4 attempts achieve temporary entries into frontline bays, 2 reach communication trenches behind. Those 2 are cleared by grenade and bayonet at heavy cost. 1 attempt reaches a corridor and is stopped cold by a machine gun crew holding fixed lines for 4 hours. The difference in outcomes is not mere spirit. It is the degree to which geometry and tempo were made obeyed by men who refused to freelance under stress. At 6:03, the horizon begins to pale. Dawn is a clock for both sides. Visibility climbs in steps. Grenadiers lose the corner and favor saps. Riflemen risk peeping. The trench lip stops being a clean silhouette and starts being a graded blur. The fixed line methodology becomes, if anything, more important as eyes lie about distance. Liddell adds one more hack to the stack. He uses a pencil to mark the dial positions for dawn set. 1 mark for the look of the corner under low light, a hair left compared to night. 1 for the rearmost limit where the trench floor dips, 1 for the sap mouth if it reopens under agitation. The pegs still enforce the bounds. The pencil lines steer within them. This removes the need to interpret. It replaces a human's urge to correct with the comfort of a mark that says, "You already figured this out when you were calm." The platoon commander sends a runner with a message more precious than praise, relief coming at 07 if the corridor holds. That is 40+ minutes away. The crew absorbs the information and discards the emotion. The machine remains a metronome. The jacket gurgles as it breathes. The belt box gets light enough that the board underneath is felt through the soles. The smell in the dugout has become a property of the air and is no longer noticed. A final enemy attempt begins at 6:31. It is not a rush and not a trick. It is a steady drip of pairs who have been told to keep trying until the British miss. The logic is understandable. The logic fails. The first pair go. The first pair stop. The second pair wait longer than the first, trying to desynchronize from the gun's rhythm. It does not help, because the gun has shackled itself to the geometry of the space, not to a watch alone. The third pair do not appear at all, perhaps recognizing that less is not more. The corridor stays clear. What the men discovered in practice this night reframes the first minutes. The simple hack of pegs and wire did not merely stop the gun from drifting. It changed the crew's relationship to stress. It turned adrenaline from a force that widens arcs and speeds thumbs into a signal they could ignore. The wire did not just bind the gun. It bound the team to a discipline they could not unchoose in the rush. That changed everything. When the wire is on, you cannot sweep on impulse. When pegs are driven into a board, you cannot widen the lane to be safe and end by being useless. The device removes bad options. It is the rare battlefield tool whose power is negative, subtraction of error rather than addition of fire. 2 pegs, 1 wire, a dial, a corridor, 4 hours, no entry. Thesis in 1 line. In narrow spaces, the best weapon is not more bullets, but fewer decisions. By 0702, the relief team arrives, blinking in new sunlight. They bring fresh belts and a clean condenser can. They also bring eyes wide at the sight line. A corner scuffed into a chalky soup, bits of timber and grenade tin pressed into the wall like fossils, footprints stamped and overstamped until the soil became felt. The outgoing crew does not pose. They are bone-tired in the way that makes words too expensive. They hand over quietly, pass the marks and the pegs, and walk the 30 steps to the dugout without ceremony. The after-action notes written later compress what you have just seen into 6 sentences. They read bland. They are not. They state rounds fired, total water used, stoppages encountered, none major, relief time, enemy attempts estimated between 5 and 8, casualties unknown. One line mentions that use of condenser decreased visible steam, that topping the jacket was successful, and that non-standard liquid was employed when necessary. Another line notes the pegs, traverse check employed, period. That is all. Behind those words lies method that turned the crew into a device and a trench into a machine. Zooming out across the war, this night plugs into a broader shift that quietly decided many small fights. The early months of the war were full of sweeping arcs and machine gunners treating the weapon like a hose. The middle years rewarded those who made the weapon an instrument. Indirect fire on fixed lines across no man's land at night using clinometers and maps, enfilade from strong points that were sighted in daylight and defended in darkness, barrage coordination by telephone and clicker, range cards pinned to legs to remove thinking under shock. Each is a subtraction of freedom in exchange for repeatable effect. Not romance. Systems. The human cost sits beneath the systems. The corridor stayed clear, which means men who would have died in close-in crush did not. It also means men who tried to come down the lane did die. The crew avoids hero talk because they know how little of it is theirs. They were careful before the night, methodical during it, and quiet after. The geometry did most of the cruelty. The geometry saved most of the friends. Comparative figures settle the case. Another unit, 2 trenches overheld for the same hours with a Lewis gun used aggressively in sweep. They fired roughly 5,000 rounds and suffered barrel overheat that forced 2 10-minute gaps. 2 enemy parties broke through, causing 30-plus casualties in butts and bays before they were thrown out. The Vickers crew in Corridor fired fewer rounds, about 4,000, never changed a barrel, never ceded the lane, and held with 6 men, not through more expenditure, but through less choice. The soldiers who taught the wire and peg trick rarely wrote poems. They left behind objects, bent pegs, dial faces grimed with graphite, boards with numbers erased by rain. The objects say enough. They tell you that in the trenches, survival came from narrowing a field until it could be mastered. They tell you that the war, for all its enormity, was decided minute by minute in places as small as a doorway, by crews who treated fearful minutes as tolerances to be held. Years later, when veterans tried to explain what had worked, they reached for the plainest language. Keep it level, fix your lines, don't sweep, make the gun a gate, or as one old gunner would tell a curious grandson while tightening a vise on a workbench, once it's set, don't fiddle, you set it for a reason. He did not mean the vise only. He meant the 4 hours in a trench where a simple hack kept the corridor clear. Return to 317. Same trench, same men, same small actions. Hargreaves shifting the can against his hip, Little centering the bubble, the wire drawn tight. In the dark, all you can do is hold what can be held, not by louder zeal, but by quieter constraint. The simple hack is not romantic. It is reliable. 2 pegs, 1 wire, a dial, a bubble, 4 little limits that turned 4 long hours into a clean result. 1 line button. In a war of excess, victory here came from restraint.